People keep asking if I'm back. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
It's a great time for this because the John Wick 4 trailer came out today, which is a holiday in my household. So really timing this up well. We've got a few to dig into here. None bigger than Mike McCarthy going back to play against the Packers. We talked about this earlier today. I think it's 5 wicks. I think it has to be, right? I mean, think about all of the layers of this. Mike McCarthy gets fired. Matt LaFleur comes in. Packers go 13-3 that first year. Everything is about, oh, they were misusing Rodgers at the end. And I'm guilty of this. I was a part of this chorus. McCarthy was misusing Rodgers at the end. All they needed was to bring in somebody else. They've could totally turn this thing around. Rodgers wins 2 MVPs in a row. This team's winning 13 games a year. McCarthy gets to Dallas. He's struggling a little bit. Well, hold on, everybody. Now we've seen that when Aaron Rodgers is a little bit disinterested and frustrated, what that can do to your offense. And so pulling apart how much of this was Mike McCarthy's fault at the end versus how much of it was Aaron Rodgers, all of that, I feel like the narrative winds have shifted a little bit here. And I can assume that Mike McCarthy wants to exact a little bit of revenge this weekend. And I don't blame him.
Yeah, I don't think you can make the Wick scale big enough for this one. It would be some kind of like, what is it, Fast 12 that's going to outer space? This would be like John Wick in space or something. The extra element to this, and Mike McCarthy has done this plenty himself, by the way, with the in-game management stuff, which is a true failing of his coaching, right? They made it very clear on the way. I remember Bleacher Report had an amazing story where there was a word used from like an anonymous source about McCarthy, where I think the word was bozo, and then Rodgers used the same word like in the next preseason press conference. That was what they said about the man. It was not that like, you know, it was
I forgot about the massage stories. Getting massages in the middle of the day in his office. That's right. Everyone was just shitting on him. That's so true.
They made him out to be a dope, not just like a bad football coach, right? And so here he comes now with this freight train ready to take on the Rodgers situation. Is not just what happens to the offense, but what happens to the entire building when he's just not feeling it, or when he's in this mode, is the whole building gets sour. And the level of smugness for McCarthy must just be unbelievable.
I mean, I guarantee you he wants to win by 50 this week.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and we'll see what happens. Like, I mean, this Packers team is an absolute mess. We just talked about how much the Cowboys are rolling right now on offense. Even if the Packers defense is better than the ones they played over the last 2 weeks, they've got most of their good players out. Like, there's a lot to be worried about here if you are Matt LaFleur and you are the Green Bay Packers going against Mike McCarthy. So, man, 5 weeks I think is appropriate. Very rarely do we bust that out, but this seems like the right moment. All right, next one here. Stefon Diggs going up against the Vikings. I'm assuming there's various opinions on this. I'm going 2 wicks for Steph against the Vikings for this reason. In the moment, right? If this had been week 1 of the 2020 season, when Diggs, 2020? If this is week 1 of the 2020 season, right after Diggs gets traded, we hadn't seen him in Buffalo. We didn't know how it was going to go. The level of acrimony is super high. Maybe this is 4 or 5 sort of wicks because he was unhappy and he was shipped out of town. Stefon Diggs getting shipped to Buffalo changed his football destiny. Like, I love Stefon Diggs in Minnesota. I thought he was a top 5 receiver when he was there. I have receipts. I was very excited about him with Josh Allen. But him getting to play with Allen has changed the entire trajectory of who he is, how he's going to be remembered, all of that stuff. So even if he was a little bit upset during his final days in Minneapolis, and he was a little bit upset about getting traded initially, I still feel like this worked out just fine in the end for Stefon Diggs.
Oh, this has to be a 1 or even a negative. He's got to be rolling in there with cigars and high fives and how's everyone doing? How have you all been? I mean, he got traded to a generational quarterback and then was given the credit for like 10 weeks to a season before we realized how special Josh Allen was, that it was all because of him. So it was a pretty sweet deal for him. It's not as though, 2 wonderful cities, wonderful places, but it's not as though they made him move from Miami to Buffalo, right? He was training in whatever environment for a similar one. And now, as you said, his football destiny has been completely altered. So he should be rolling back there pretty pleased.
Yeah, 2 might be strong. It might be 1. I mean, again, I think that he was pretty upset near the end, and I get that. And it's never fun for a team to be like, we don't want you anymore. But things have worked out just fine for Stefon Diggs. Related to this, Case Keenum playing against the Vikings, 0 wicks. Like I talked about this earlier in the week. If he ends up for you guys that can't see the YouTube stream, it's just a picture of John Wick holding his puppy. Case Keenum was a career backup, a very good career backup, right? Like Case Keenum is one of those guys where he's one of the best 38 quarterbacks in the world, and that is a fantastic life. And he stumbles into this year as a starter with the Vikings. They have the second best offense in the league by DVOA. They go on this miracle run without their starting quarterback, without their starting running back for a huge chunk of the season. They get to the playoffs. They play against a Super Bowl worthy Saints team, like probably the best roster top to bottom in the NFL that season. And they have one of the most memorable, spectacular moments in the history of the NFL postseason. I was there. I will remember it forever. And guess what? So will every Vikings fan from now until the end of time. Anytime Case Keenum steps into the Twin Cities, he will never buy a beer again for the rest of his life. He will get handshakes from strangers for the rest of his life. And beyond this, after that season, when he played this well, he gets a 3-year, $50 million contract from the Broncos, 25 of which is guaranteed. He hadn't made $5 million in his entire career before he got that contract. I can't imagine there's any bad blood between Case Keenum and the Minnesota Vikings organization.
Oh no, he should just be blowing kisses and giving waves. I can't imagine how many people he'll bump into who will introduce him to their child named Case. That's looking at the timeline of this thing. There's probably going to be a few of them, some 4 or 5-year-olds.